The Majority Report with Sam Cedars. So I've been watching the response video to the Trump-Zelensky meeting, and I'm about, I don't know, 6 minutes or so into the video, and they still haven't explained what their disagreement with Donald Trump actually is. They largely seem to be criticizing and, of course, ridiculing, because that's what they do, ridiculing him for his combativeness and his, I suppose, his unpresidential-like behavior with arguing with another world leader in front of the cameras, but they haven't gotten into anything substantive. The video and the way they're choosing to frame this is, quote, Trump attacks Zelensky during unhinged ambush. That's the title of their video. If you watch one of my previous videos that I did on the Trump-Zelensky meeting, you'll see that this was no ambush. What happened and what really got this started was that during the meeting, both Trump and JD Vance were just repeating what they've said over and over again since before they were elected. Trump was saying that the US is going to be going in a different direction, that they want peace with Russia. JD Vance criticized the Biden administration and said that it's very important to have diplomacy. That was literally JD Vance's comments. And then Zelensky, in front of the media, in front of everyone, openly criticized the vice president and essentially told him, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. He told them, what kind of diplomacy can you have with Russia? Now, again, as the vice president, as the president, you're not going to allow a foreign leader in front of the American media to come in and quite literally tell you, hey, you're wrong, and B, you don't know what you're talking about. And if you look, after JD Vance got into an argument with Zelensky, Trump stayed quiet. He didn't say anything until Zelensky implied that Russia was going to bomb the United States. Understand, Zelensky was trying to push propaganda on the American people in front, or while he was right next to President Trump. And to add insult to injury, he was blaming President Trump for it. In effect, Zelensky was quite literally saying, hey, you have this ocean in between us, but after Russia's done, after this quote-unquote fake peace deal is accomplished, you're going to feel it. Now, if you're the president of any nation, you're not going to allow a foreign leader to come to you and to tell your people on your own national television, on your own national media, that, hey, your president is going to get you bombed. Of course, there's going to be a negative reaction to that. And the Majority Report's whole point on this is, well, hey, JD Vance was never involved in any of these meetings, so he must have been planted there to have an argument. But once again, Zelensky started the argument, and then he implied the United States would be bombed because of Donald Trump. That's where the argument started, and that's where the correction was required. So Donald Trump and JD Vance were completely in the right to address this. But once again, I mean, here's the thing about the Majority Report. They're just a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party. They're just anti-Trump. It doesn't really matter what he says or does. They've set them up as anti-Trump because regardless of what they want to say about Trump flexing his muscles for his audience, the Majority Report has their own audience. And their audience is largely a group of people who is anti-Trump no matter what he says or does. Why? Probably related to some social issues like identity issues, etc. We're not going to get into that. But the Majority Report understands that their audience will never allow them not to criticize Trump, that there will be a major backlash from their audience. So what do? They just continue to criticize Trump no matter what he does. What is the goal of the Majority Report? What is the purpose of this video? Is the purpose of this video to argue against diplomacy? Is the purpose of this video to say, hey, we should keep sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine? Well, not we, I'm from Canada, but I guess they. So that they should that they should keep sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine to support the war against Russia? That they support a possible confrontation against Russia, that they support continued sanctions on Russia? What exactly is the purpose of this video? What is their goal? Because they seem to be criticizing Trump for nothing. And one thing they say is, hey, and this is probably the only substantive point they make, but it's easily countered, where they say, hey, well, if the United States isn't going to be supporting Ukraine or isn't going to be supporting Europe, what it encourages Europe to do is that it encourages Europe to individual European countries like Germany to develop their own nuclear weapons, and that's going to be a disaster and blah, blah, blah. 2 points of analysis here. Number one, essentially by saying that, what they're really saying is they're saying, hey, the American empire needs to continue. So not only are they mouthpieces of the Democratic Party, they are mouthpieces of the establishment here, because they are quite literally saying that, hey, we need to continue the American empire at all costs. And how do we continue that empire? We make sure that we are the only ones who have nuclear weapons. We have nuclear hegemony throughout the world so that we can continue our empire. That's what they seem to be saying here. But number two, it's asinine. The idea that Germany or another country is going to go and develop nuclear weapons, yes, that's possible, but there are deterrents for it. Number one, Germany will not necessarily pursue that. Why? Because if the United States is actually consistent with their policies, they'll impose sanctions on Germany for trying to do that. So will the other EU countries. Germany will face economic sanctions, and which will hopefully cause them to abandon the nuclear program. But let's take a look at Iran, for example, because the United States has put sanctions on Iran for decades, claiming that Iran is planning on developing nuclear weapons. To this day, Iran hasn't developed any nuclear weapons. Why hasn't Iran developed nuclear weapons? It's not because of the sanctions. The reason why Iran hasn't developed nuclear weapons is because Iran understands that if it develops nuclear weapons, it's going to encourage its neighbors to also develop nuclear weapons, which will continue, or which will actually put it at risk. Iran is a rational actor, and I would assume so would Germany be. I mean, think about Iran's position for a moment. Israel has nuclear weapons. Pakistan has, there are countries around it that has nuclear weapons, and Israel is threatening Iran almost weekly. Every week we see some article about Israel saying they want to attack Iran. Israel has nothing, Iran has a whole bunch of sanctions on it, and they still have not develop nuclear weapons despite all of that. The idea that all of a sudden Germany and other countries are going to develop nuclear weapons is just an excuse, and the majority report knows it's an excuse. It's an excuse for them to kind of take some cover while they protect and defend the American empire, which they so desperately want to continue. What Trump is essentially saying is we don't want World War III. Ukraine, NATO in Ukraine specifically, is an existential threat to Russia. They will never allow NATO to be in Ukraine. Russia will not back down from this. And the idea that the United States should continue funding Ukraine and possibly playing with World War III, possibly playing with a nuclear attack from Russia, which will then, initiate a nuclear response from a different country, is asinine. And again, they don't address any of that, right? The only thing they address is, oh, hey, Trump is silly, and this was silly, and Trump is a bad president, and blah blah blah. These guys are clowns. I mean, I used to watch the Majority Report, and unlike them, because I don't view the world in black and white, they sometimes make some good points. But they're also largely a mouthpiece of the Democratic Party. And the more I listen to these people, and the more I realize that the game that they're playing, the more disgusted I get with them, because I am not a Trump supporter in any way. Basically, I've been anti-Trump against a lot of his policies. That being said, credit where credit is due. And if Trump does something that I think is the correct move, I'm going to give him credit for that. I'm not just going to make fun of him or ridicule him because, hey, I have to do that. Right? I'm an anti-Trump person. And that's the position they've taken. They've basically taken the position of, we're the opposition to Trump, we're the opposition to the right, so no matter what Trump says, we're going to argue against it and we're going to ridicule him for it.